So it's great to be here. This is definitely a testament to the power of social media, as I tweeted about 3 months ago that I was speaking in Croatia and Iceland. Tomek saw the tweet and said, "Hey, Rich, if you're going to be in the neighborhood, why don't you come to Krakow?" So apparently this is in the neighborhood of Croatia and Iceland, so given the length of the time it took me to get my wife and I to get from Iceland to here yesterday, you've got a big neighborhood here in Europe. So I'm going to talk about joy today in the context of business. I will tell you, when you write a business book that has the words joy on the cover and you release it to the world, it is a very vulnerable moment, because you wonder, will people take you seriously? And given the amount of travel I'm doing and the amount of times I give a talk like this around the world, it's clear that the world is desperate for a message like this. I am going to give you a 90-second peek, a video, into what I'm going to talk about today. The video itself is a book trailer, but it just is it's not like I'm trying to sell you books. You're welcome to buy them, of course, but the point is the video actually gives you a pretty good peek inside of Menlo. Most organizations don't really spend much time thinking about their culture. Most organizations operate in chaos. Everyone wants to work on something that's bigger than themselves. I did. I started out in an industry that I was very excited about. Very quickly, I hit a trough of disillusionment. And by 1997, when I was promoted to vice president of product development, I wanted out. I wanted to get as far away from this industry as I could. And then in that moment, I decided to change the industry. And that's the story that I've captured in this book. People are coming from all over the planet to come visit this space that's in the basement of a parking structure in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan. And they're coming for a reason. They're coming to see something. What most people are looking for is some lessons around what it takes to build an intentionally joyful culture. Imagine half of my team had joy and the other half didn't. Which half would you want working on your project? We had so many requests for these tours, we realized it was time to share this story with the world in a different way. And that's how the book came to me. The space is flexible. We work 2 to a computer. We assign these pairs. We switch them every 5 working days. The human energy that results from this kind of organization, you can actually feel the joy when you're in the room. My name is Richard Sheridan, and I'm the author of Joy, Inc. All right, pick up your copy today for sure. Okay. So I want to tell you a little bit about my personal story, because I think unless you understand, and so I'm concerned about all of you standing. I don't know, do you want to come in and sit down? There's lots of chairs over here. I just want you to be comfortable. There's no joy in discomfort. So. I think it would be hard to understand why I would be tempted to create a company like Menlo unless you understand a little bit of my personal story. So I started out in this industry when I was just a kid, 1971. I typed a 2-line program into a computer in my high school, and it came back on a roll of paper, because that's the way they used to work in those days. And it clacked out the words, "Hi, Rich," because that's what I told it to do. It was my version of Hello World. And I was hooked. I knew what I wanted to do the rest of my days. I thought, this is going to be a cool profession. And so by 1973, I created a program that would win an international programming contest for what would now be termed fantasy baseball. I just wanted to play baseball in the cold Michigan winter months, so I typed in all of the professional baseball players and allowed my friends and I to pick lineups and play each other. That contest win landed me my first job as a programmer before I was even old enough to drive a car. And I started working as a programmer, and I worked for several years, eventually going up to the University of Michigan and got 2 degrees in computer science and computer engineering. And by 1982, I was ready for what I thought was going to be the most delightful career ever. 1982, the IBM personal computer was just coming out, the Apple Macintosh a couple of years later, and I thought, this is going to be an amazing industry to be a part of, and I'm in it right at the beginning. And for the next 15 years or so, I had what the world would call tremendous success. New jobs, promotions, stock options, everything the world measures as success I had. Greater title, greater authority, bigger teams, everything. I was on this wonderful upward trajectory. There was only one significant problem. There was a different line going on at exactly the same time. My heart was breaking for the industry I had chosen. I wanted out. As the video said, I wanted to get as far away from this industry as I could. So what was going on for me? What was I experiencing? I was experiencing maybe is what some of you have experienced in your own career. Most of my days were filled with chaos. Chaos in the software industry is easy to imagine, isn't it? We're in firefighting mode all the time. There are missed deadlines, there are blown budgets, there are unhappy customers, there is bugs everywhere. It feels like we might as well come to work dressed as firefighters, right? And I would come home at the end of very long days, often missing dinner with my family, and my wife would look at a tired version of me and say, honey, did you get a lot done today? You look really tired. And I realized, no, I got nothing done today. And of course, if you operate in chaos for too long, bad things happen, negative events. The one I talk about in the book was not anything I was connected with. It was just a powerful story from within our industry. A group called Knight Capital Group had a tired programmer update their New York Stock Exchange trading platform when he made a fairly straightforward mistake. And in the next 45 minutes, that trading platform traded $7 billion worth of securities it was not supposed to, costing Knight Capital Group $400 million in 45 minutes. Are you with me? Would that be considered a negative event at your company? And the trouble is, when there are negative events inside of organizations, there is typically an organizational response. And the response in our industry, well, it typically looks like a big, thick 3-ring binder, a software development lifecycle binder. It is a binder filled with valueless documents that describe committees and sign-off sheets and procedures and processes and meetings and all this sort of thing. We have to put a police force in charge of it, a project management office, just to make sure all the signatures are signed. And you go from chaos to full-blown bureaucracy. You go from the land of never getting anything done to the land of never getting anything started. Why? Because we're waiting for a decision to be made, a sign-off, a meeting to occur, an approval, a stage gate to be passed. And of course, in our industry, we can't wait, that it's changing too fast. So we learn to work around the system with what I call shadow IT. We start to weave our way back and forth around the process. Oh yes, we get the forms filled out, but to get real work done happens in a completely different way. And now you're operating in the worst possible version of our industry. You're operating in chaos and bureaucracy simultaneously. This was my life. This was where I was at. Now, eventually, typically, an organization wakes up and says, hey, wait a minute. We don't need all of these processes and procedures for every project. We could actually have a lighter version of our process, a little stapled together document for short projects, just a few committees, a few sign-offs, a few approvals. We'll call that SDLC Light. And of course, at a certain point, even those meetings don't happen, those sign-offs don't occur. So somebody wakes up one day and says, hey, let's get rid of all this stuff. Let's fire the PMO. Let's get rid of all this stuff and declare we're agile now. And most of the time, what I see is all that means is chaos again. And back and forth my life was going. And I will tell you, by my mid-30s, I was scared. I didn't know what I was going to do. By this point, wife, 3 kids, house, 2 cars. I had great responsibilities in my life. I was thinking about escaping the industry. I was thinking about moving to the wilds of Minnesota and starting a canoe camp. The women always laugh the same way when I say that. But there will be at least one guy in the audience who says, "Hey, Rich, can we talk about that canoe camp idea?" I got pretty far along in my thinking. You know, my wife is sitting over here somewhere. Where are you, honey? Where did you end up? Where is she? Oh, there she is, right there, yeah. She's like, "Really? Did you think the girls and I would follow you to the canoe camp?" Ladies, every guy needs an escape fantasy. Believe me, we need them, okay, in order to work through another day. And so this was the life I was trying to escape. And so here I am, heartbreaking an industry that I thought I was going to love. I was well prepared for. I thought I was pretty good at, but I'm failing everywhere I turn. I thought, how do I get out of this? Because my eternal optimist kicked in. I was stuck in a room full of manure, and I was going to keep digging till I found the pony. Does that translate well? I'm not sure that translated well. That should have been more laughter there, but okay. So anyways, so my journey out led me to authors and books, but not books on technology, because quite frankly, technology is trivial compared to how do we organize human teams. This was my purpose. This was my goal. Now I had a new mission. How do I organize the people who work for me in a way that's more effective and doesn't rob them of their human energy? So the books I was drawn to are books like Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, on the art and practice of building a learning organization. Tom Peters' book, In Search of Excellence. Peter Drucker's books on management. All of these books were telling me that there was a better way of doing things than is customary. Unfortunately, they didn't tell me how to do it. But in 1999, I realized that there was a new way. Kent Beck was just coming out with a book on something called extreme programming. I saw a video on an industrial design firm in Palo Alto called IDEO, and suddenly, boom, I had a click moment. And over the next 2 years, from my perch as VP of R&D for a company called Interface Systems, I transformed a very tired old organization. And I would probably still be there to this day. But in 2001, something significant happened in our industry. The internet bubble burst. And the California parent that had bought my company and thought they were going to grow it by great leaps and bounds suddenly shuttered every remote office they had, including mine, and I was out of work for the first time since 1973. I went home. I told my wife I'd lost my job. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and she said, "You're unemployed now?" And I said, "No, honey, I'm an entrepreneur now." Now, if you ask her, she'll tell you that she learned very quickly that entrepreneurship actually pays less than unemployment insurance. But by 6 months in, we were profitable and we've been running the business ever since. So I took what I had learned in those 2 years, because while they could take away the job, they could take away the title, the building, the team, the paycheck, the stock options, they could take away everything but what I had learned in those 2 years. And I knew we could do it again, because over those 2 years, I saw something that actually amazed me. I had no idea how much better things could actually be. And it wasn't a question of finding the perfect tuning place for this dial. It was in getting rid of this completely. And what I recognized was, to get there, we need systems and structure. Simple, repeatable, measurable, visible structure based on human relationships that feed human energy. And that's what I want to talk with you about today. Now, today I describe it in terms of joy. Now, joy is an unusual word in just about any context. A lot of people think that I'm talking about happiness. Joy is very different from happiness. Believe me, at Menlo, we are not happy every minute of every day. I don't think that would be possible in any business context, and certainly not in the software industry. In fact, I think being happy every minute of every day would require medication. Joy is a much longer arc. Joy is that the work of our hearts, our hands, and our minds gets out into the world and delights the people for whom it was intended. Joy is in service to others. And so what I want to talk about with you is, what does that look like? How do we get there? How do we get to this deeper sense of satisfaction for what drives us as an industry? Because I believe the heart of the engineer is simply this. We want to see our work be completed, done with pride, get out into the world, delight the people it's intended to serve, and one day hear back from them that they love what we created. That is what drives the heart of the engineer. And I can tell you, as I said, a lot of this was taken away from me in the early part of my career. Yes, I was spending a lot of time away from my family. There was a lot of times where I missed celebrations, where I missed holidays, where I missed things that were important because I was trying to get something done in that chaotic environment. And I wasn't being led with fear, or with joy, I was being led with fear. Now, fear is not a good way to lead a team. In fact, fear puts us in reptile brain mode, and then we just are simply staying in that cycle and doing what the boss tells us to do rather than what we know is right. And if we operate constantly in this idea of chaos and bureaucracy, where it feels like there's fires everywhere, and quite frankly, the fires are ones that we are likely setting in our processes, we feel like arsonists. We feel like people who set fire on purpose, just so we can put them out later. This is not a joyful feeling at all. And quite frankly, the biggest problem for me, and I've seen this across our industry, is that eventually projects we work on get canceled before they ever see the light of day. They get buried out in the backyard. I think one of the largest business project failures in the history of mankind occurred in our industry, when 10,000 people worked for 5 years to deliver something to the world, and as soon as it shipped, management canceled the project. You all know it as Windows Vista, right? Windows Vista, as soon as it shipped, Microsoft sent a coupon with every new computer saying you can downgrade XP. We were just kidding. 10,000 people working for 5 years in Microsoft Death March culture. That's about a $10 billion project by simple estimates. And this is what I was trying to avoid. And on my journey, eventually, I saw Kent Beck's book. It spoke to me as it spoke to so many others. Kent was clearly a programmer as frustrated as I was. He just articulated a wonderful new kind of practices in extreme programming. Explained the industrial design firm IDEO taught me that there was a better way to learn what will actually work for users, and that's when I had that click moment where suddenly everything snapped into place. So what I want to contemplate with you in the rest of my talk is this. Does joy matter? Can you see it? Can you feel it? Can you touch it? And does it in fact produce business results? Because if it doesn't produce business results, we can't keep doing it. And I will tell you, a lot of people come, oops, we'll just turn that off. I don't know why that's there. A lot of people come from all over the planet to see what we've created. We had over 3,000 visitors last year come from every country just to come and see. And what do they see when they walk in? Well, the first thing they see is one of those vilified open office environments you hear about. You know, the kind that Fast Company magazine says is an idea born in the mind of Satan in the deepest caverns of hell. You know, they've got psychologists that prove these kind of open office environments don't work. They actually tell us that for introverted engineers, this is the worst possible environment for introverted engineers. There is psychologists with data that proves they don't work. There are books now written on the subject, and I can tell you, I know this because everyone sends them to me. And so people come in, they see this, and they say, Rich, I hear these environments don't work. Why do they seemingly work for you? And I say it's very simple. We didn't build an open and collaborative office. We built an open and collaborative culture. Our workspace is a reflection of our cultural values of openness, of transparency, of collaboration, of trust, of teamwork. You can actually feel it when you walk in the room. It is a noisy environment. We have very few rules at Menlo, but one of the strongest is you cannot wear earbuds while you're working because we want you to overhear the ideas of others. And so in this noisy environment, you can actually feel the teamwork. Why? Because you can see the teamwork. It's people working shoulder to shoulder to shoulder in this environment. The space itself is set up to be flexible, just like the team itself is set up to be flexible. These pull-down wires from the ceiling, the lightweight aluminum tables, scream to the team, change me if you need to. There are no space police. There's no one overseeing the office. If the team wants to change the space, they change it. The space is set up exactly the way the team wants to set up the space. There's no permission to ask for changing how the space is set up. And for all the years of our existence, our team has chosen to push the tables front to front and side to side. They actually want to be this close together. We have you saw in the video, it's a big expansive space. We still have lots of room to grow. We still have lots of places to put people, and yet the team chooses to sit this close to one another. Their choice. And oh, by the way, I sit out in the room with everybody else. Right now, my desk is right about here. There is no corner office for the CEO. And the last time they changed everything, they moved my table about 35 feet closer to the front door. I'm trying to be good these days because my worry is I'll come back from one of these conferences and they'll have put me on the other side of the glass door and change the locks. It's also very visual spaces. I'll show you in a little bit. We're very much into visual management, so you'll get a chance to see what that looks like. And we built that learning organization that Peter Senge talked about in the 5th discipline. The subtitle of that book was The Art and Practice of the Learning Organization. And yes, books are ubiquitous at Menlo. We have books everywhere, books that inform my journey. I want books to be available to anybody who wants them. And so we buy a lot of books. This is just a small sampling of the bookshelves that we have at Menlo with books that are freely available to anybody on the team. But the real trick to our learning organization is not in the books. It's how we organize the people. You see, we connect our people intellectually. We connect them emotionally. We connect them physically. Two people working at one computer all day long, working on the same task at the same time. The pairs are assigned at the beginning of the week, and we switch them every 5 working days. I'm guessing at some of maybe the open space sessions, you want to talk to me a little bit about the pairing construct at Menlo. But this is the fundamental building block of our collaborative and flexible team. And then what we knew we had to do was we had to fundamentally change the conversations we were having. Now, I love this quote from John Naisbitt. What's remarkable about this quote is that he wrote it in 1982. And look what he says, that the most exciting breakthroughs of the time we're in right now are not going to occur because of technology, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human. I think we need this message more than ever today, because there are many times where our technology tends to separate us rather than bring us together. It's not that technology is inherently bad. It's just sometimes we trade some really important aspects of what we do in favor of technology, and the technology doesn't always improve things. So we looked fundamentally at 3 different conversations that had to change. We looked at the conversation in the room with each other. We looked at the conversation with our customers. And we looked at the conversation with what I call the lost tribe of technology. Now, you've probably heard about lost tribes, like in the Amazon forest. You know, the anthropologists are hacking their way through the jungles, and then one day they discover all of these people that no one has ever seen before, people that just have never been touched by mankind. In our industry, we call those the users. Well, let's be honest, we call them the stupid users. And then we write dummies books for those poor people because they don't understand our wonderfully designed technology. So we have to also change how we communicate with the people we ultimately serve with the work that we do. So what I want to pull you through are just a few examples of how we have changed the conversations inside of our company. So the first one I'm going to look at is how do we communicate internally? And interestingly enough, When we communicate internally, well, we don't use electronics. Now that's kind of interesting, right? I'm often invited in to companies and they show me how their teams work. The visits often go something like this. They walk me through a sea of darkened cubicles. And the person guiding me, the leader, says, Rich, this is where our technical team works. They're thinking really deep thoughts right now. Now we walk by these cubicles and everyone has their back to the door. They have earbuds in their ears, so I'm not sure why we're whispering. Their monitor is carefully turned away so we can't see what's on it. And then we get to the corner office and they close the door and they say, the first thing I want to talk with you about is our communication challenges. Like, really? Shocking. You think it's because nobody's talking to one? Oh, no. We have all the latest electronics installed. Everybody. I'm like, so you're doing Slack over the cube walls. Awesome. That's neat. But at Menlo, we don't use high technology to communicate. We use what we call high-speed voice technology. The hardware was pre-installed at birth, supplemented by body language and eyebrows, tonal inflection. In fact, if we want to call an all-company meeting at Menlo, do you guys have meetings where you work? Anybody have meetings where you work? How many, show of hands, how many have meetings? Okay, we hate meetings. We think they're mind-numbing, spirit-sucking, energy-draining devices of management. Anybody with me on that? Yeah, okay. So if we want to have an all-company meeting, here's the way it works. I'm going to say, hey, Menlo. You're going to say, hey, Rich. Hey, Menlo. Hey, Rich. And the whole place goes quiet, and we are now in an all-company meeting. No book the conference room, no CC all emails, no checking everybody's calendars, no what I call 10-minute meeting dance where you're peeking into oh, nope, I can go get a cup of coffee. Oh, I can check my email, right? No. Hey, Menlo, hey, Rich, conduct the business of the meeting, say thank you, everybody gets back to work. Our all-company meetings last somewhere between 7 and 15 seconds, and then everybody's back to work. Now, if you ever come and visit, and you walk in our front door, you can try this. It works for you, too. You can just walk in the room and go, you got to be loud. You go, hey, Menlo! And they'll all go, hey, you! And they'll all go quiet, so you should have something to say. And I'll be looking at you, so you can just say, well, Rich told me to try this, see if it worked. You know? And then they'll all laugh, and they'll go back to work. But the point is, we want to increase the productivity of the team by not trapping human beings in mind-numbing meetings. Now, here's my first big takeaway for you as you think about meetings at your company. I want to ask you if you've ever witnessed this behavior in a meeting. And what I call is that what you want to look for in your next meeting, you can use a stopwatch. I'm guessing it won't last more than 60 seconds. What you want to look for is the first moment of disengagement in the meeting. And here's what it looks like. Everybody's sitting around the table and somebody's presenting, and then somebody in the meeting, maybe you, goes like this. And then later somebody says, hey, Rich, I thought you had something to say about this, didn't you? Oh, I'm sorry, are you talking to me? Well, where were we at? What were we talking about? You ever see this behavior in a meeting? Kill those meetings. Because the person doing this is saying, I don't need to be here. Okay? I heard this funny joke this morning about Paul's view of meetings where he works. Somebody said, Paul, you weren't at the meeting. It was mandatory. He says, oh, am I fired? Well, no, you're not fired. He says, then it wasn't mandatory. I don't know that either Paul or I could guarantee that you don't get fired in that exchange. So just be careful when you try that where you work. We do have one meeting a day. The meeting itself is called by a dartboard on the wall. Now, how can a dartboard call a meeting? Well, the dartboard actually has an alarm clock right here. I would love someone to explain to me why a dartboard needs an alarm clock. but it was programmable. We're programmers, we programmed it. And at 10 o'clock every morning, the dartboard goes bong, 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 and everyone rises and gathers in a circle. We should understand that the base word of culture is cult, right? Everybody comes, even the dogs come to stand up, okay? And then we pass around the iconic symbol of Menlo. Now, I will tell you, I was just in Iceland yesterday. I gave a talk like this, and it was delightful because the iconic symbol of Menlo is the two-horned plastic Viking helmet. We found these in stores everywhere in downtown Reykjavik, this exact Viking helmet. Why do we like the two-horned plastic Viking helmet? Because when we report out at our daily stand-up meeting, we report out in our pairs. And having a two-handled talking stick is actually really convenient. And we also like to poke our finger in the eye of boring management systems, so we figured, why not run a stand-up meeting called by a dartboard with a plastic Viking helmet and just have a little bit of fun? And so the Viking helmet moves around the room. There will be 60 or 70 people in our stand-up meeting. Most people would claim you cannot do a stand-up with more than 12 people, or there's some magic number. As you will learn later, our view is, well, let's just keep trying it until it breaks, and it hasn't broken yet. And the token passes around the meeting, and it gets to the very end, and somebody sets it down, and we're done. Our meeting typically takes 13 minutes. To call, assemble, start, hold, complete, get done. I defy most companies to begin a meeting of 70 people in 13 minutes, let alone get all the way through it and have everyone have a chance to report out. So those are some ways we change the conversation in the room with each other. Secondly, how do we change our conversation with our business clients? Well, there's a couple fundamental ways we do this. The first is we run every week, every 5 business days in our world, we run a show and tell with our clients. This is their chance to check in with us, see how we're doing. But our show and tell actually does something different than you would expect. We actually reverse the roles in our show and tell. So what happens in our show and tell is we have the customer show us the work that we did the last 5 days. We don't show it to the customer shows it to us. One of the main reasons we do this is it prevents the customer from doing this. It'd be really hard to do that while you're sitting front and center in the room, but we want to connect people to the actual work we did. Because as you well know, software is theoretical until you can actually touch it, until you can see it, until you can feel it. And so we want to keep it real. Now, the customer sometimes sees things they don't like. Some things maybe even that upset them. Well, that's just life in software world. Things don't always go as planned. But if we have the check-in points frequently, we can still make mistakes. We just make them faster so we can correct them while they're still small. That's our goal in this. So that's one way we change the conversation with our customer. The other way we change it is how we do planning. We plan with little folded pieces of paper. Now, I will tell you, this is very unusual in our industry to plan with paper. You know, a lot of people come in and they see us, they take a tour, and they're like, you're serious, you're a software. Like, yes, we plan with paper. Now, why do we do this? It's not because we're like the Amish of software development or anything like that. We like simple systems. Let me show you how this works. Everything we work on at Menlo must first be written down, handwritten down on an index card. We estimate in hours, even that practice is unusual by industry standards, and then we fold the card to the size of the estimate. So a 16-hour card ends up being twice as big as an 8-hour card. Now, in case you're not seeing the spatial relationship yet, let me show you what a 4-hour card looks like. This making sense? And then what happens is our customer begins planning. And the way they plan, I'm going to teach you our project management system now. I know some of you are taking notes, so this is the point you really want to be careful of because this will be difficult. This is our planning sheet. This represents time, 1 week, humans, 2 people, and budget, 80 hours worth of effort, 2 people working together for 40 hours. And now let me demonstrate for you how this works. See this empty box here? When the customer wants to put something into the plan, they do the add function. Let me show you how add works. That's the add function. Now let me show you delete. That's the delete function. You've now learned our project management system. People ask us, why do we plan with paper? And our answer is we believe humans are visual tactile creatures, so we use visual tactile systems for planning. And what's interesting is it can be a very collaborative exercise. This is a multi-user system. Okay, you can collaborate on this. People are picking pieces of the paper up, putting them down in the planning sheets. But perhaps what's most important is only so much fits within those empty boxes, and not everything fits. You can actually see what doesn't fit because it's still on the table. Now, those of you who have meetings, we have a saying in the United States, I don't know how well this translates, but at the end of a meeting, often people say something like a person running the meeting or the boss says, "So we are all on the same page, right?" Now, if you want to be really annoying, you know, after you've not gotten fired for saying what Paul said way back when, you can say, "Hey boss, I'm okay being on the same page. Which page are we talking about?" The whiteboard, the flip chart, the notebook, the email that comes out after the meeting, the status report, I'm okay being on the same page. Could you please tell me which page? When we say we're all on the same page at Menlo, we're literally all on the same page. It's not possible to be unambiguous. And then we also know what's not in the plan. You know, ask that a question at your next meeting. What did we decide not to do? What do you mean? Well, we decided to do, is there anything we decided not to do? Well, yeah, we decided not to do everything we didn't decide to do. Like, oh, that's clear. But at Menlo, it's very clear what we decided not to do. It's still on the table. Our customers get very invested in this process. It's very simple. What's interesting about the tool, of course, is it removes all of the complexity of working with the tool and allows our customers to focus, sometimes collaboratively, just on the content. Content that's very meaningful for them because this is what's going to keep their project on schedule and on track. All supported by simple, handwritten artifacts. Now, we use handwritten for one simple reason. We believe it is impossible not to read something that you wrote by hand. Whereas with cut and paste and drag and drop and all that sort of thing, it is possible to create what some might call requirements documents, and no one ever read them, not even the person who created them. Oh, just pull this in over here, throw this in over here, slap these three things together, send an email off to the attachment, and no one reads those. At least here, we're guaranteed the person who wrote the card read the card. And then what we do is we take a copy of those cards up off the table and put them on a board on the wall. It's a 5-day cycle. In this particular client's case, their project starts on Wednesdays and ends on Tuesdays. Why doesn't it start on Monday and end on Friday? Well, the last day of the 5-day cycle for us is the day of show and tell. And our clients pick that day. They tell us when they would like to meet and give us a sense of the progress. And so we organize each client's project on their 5-day cycle. Each swim lane represents 2 people assigned to work together for a week. The cards are placed next to the day you'd expect them to complete based on the estimates that came from the people who do the work. The yarn indicates how many days have transpired in the 5-day cycle. In this case, 4 days have been completed. We're in the 5th day. And then the color-coded sticky dots tell the exact story of our status. And the story isn't always perfect. And we want it to be that way. This is one of the tools that, if handled properly, can drive fear out of the organization through transparency. Now, I say if it's handled properly because we could use a tool like this to punish as well. If you use a tool like this to punish, it will always look perfect. Because fear does not make bad news go away. Fear makes bad news go into hiding. This is a fundamental element of understanding the humans who work for us. We must create an environment where people feel reasonably safe at work. Otherwise, they operate out of reptile brain, as opposed to the most interesting part of our brain, the human part of our brain, where we can be creative and imaginative and inventive and innovative. So this board is duplicated for all of the projects we're working on. The status of each card is marked with colorful sticky dots. A yellow dot says that's the card that's being worked on right now. We work on one card at a time in our swim lane. We never try and multitask. Humans are incapable of multitasking, just so we're clear. This is why in the United States we're passing laws against texting while driving. We know that doesn't work out well. So yellow says that's what we're working on now. When the programmers finish a card, they declare they think they're done by putting an orange dot on the card. Now there's a famous saying I have at Menlo, and there's actually a poster on the wall, and this is something I use. So remember, about the first 25 years of my career, I was a coder. And I say that programmers have as many different definitions for done as Eskimos have words for snow. And it turns out, or Icelandics have words for snow, because I found out yesterday they have lots of words for snow too. Now, how many of you are programmers or have been programmers once upon in your life? Yeah, I figured this is a good crowd for this. So you've probably said, like I have from time to time, something like, well, it's done, but it's not done. Nervous laughter, yeah. Well, it's ready, but it's not complete. Well, it's complete, but it's not finished. Well, it's finished, but it's not ready. Yeah, and round it goes. Well, in our world, we can only self-declare we think we're done. And then our QA team comes around, checks the work. If QA likes what they see, green dot. It's an endorphin rush for the programmers. Means it's ready for show and tell. Now, if any QA people in the room, anybody do QA ever? Okay, a few, awesome. So if QA doesn't like what they see, red dot. That's an endorphin rush for the QA team. They broke it. Now I want to hold up our QA people because QA people want to break it while it's still in the room and not before it gets out into the world. So we want to hoist them up on a pedestal for that. Now, one of the most common definitions for done in programmer land is experienced mostly by the QA team. You know, you get something done on the computer and then you turn it over at some point in time, usually sometimes months later, and QA team comes back and says, hey, that thing I'm testing, it's not working. What's the most likely response you'll hear from the programmer? Yeah, it works on my machine. Yay! So QA people in the room, if you ever have a programmer say something like, it works on my machine, grab their machine and ship it to the customer. They will never say that again. They can't. They don't have a machine anymore. So all of these things are very important to us. And now I want to talk just a little bit about the lost tribe of technology. See, a lot of times the people we serve are very frustrated with what we have created for them. They wonder why it works the way it does. Did anybody ever talk to them? Well, the answer is typically not. Most software is designed by programmers in a whiteboarded room. You know, oh, I know how they think. I know how it should work. I think it should work like this. I use computers all day long. I know how the computer works. Users don't care how the computer works, just so we're clear, right? For example, you know, here's the most common problem with websites, at least the ones in the past. Websites had a submit button. You know what I'm talking about, right? You get something done, you want to submit it. Now, we know that there is an HTTP command called submit, so of course you would call the button submit. When a user hears submit, I submit to you. Which is exactly where we want them, isn't it? Submit is not a word that normal human beings understand. Remember, we are the industry that that teaches you if you want to shut down your computer, please press the start button. Or the ever-intuitive Control-Alt-Delete. Or the apple in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. I mean, all of this is obvious, right? I can remember when Microsoft Word got updated once, they put the print button behind the Windows flag logo. And I'm trying to get out to a meeting. I got to print a document. Somebody had upgraded my machine to the new version of Word. And I'm like, where is the print button? Now, I realize I'm stretching it a little bit here. I mean, it's not like a fundamental element of word processing would be to print something, is it? Oh, well. So our anthropologists go out into the world and study people in their native environment. Learn their workflow, their habits, their goals as human beings, learn about them. As we learn about them, we begin to create these little cards that describe the types of people we met. We call them personas. And then we organize the personas in a persona map to prioritize one versus the other, because one of the biggest troubles with software is we try to design software that works for everybody. And if we design software that works for everyone, it doesn't work for anyone well. So we have to prioritize our design decisions, and we prioritize this using this device. If Gary is the name of the persona in the center, then every design decision we make is going to focus on Gary. Now, somebody might say, well, no, it's not for Gary, it's for Jimmy, who's out here in the third ring. Okay, but how do we add the feature in for Jimmy in a way that doesn't interfere with Gary's use? So this simple construct, again, another visual artifact we use at Menlo, helps to prioritize our design decisions by the people on our team, and this is literally what it says on their computer, on their business card, our high-tech anthropologists. It's an actual title at Menlo. Engineers, but highly empathetic, compassionate designers of user experience, based on going out into the world and learning how ambiguous the world is, begin to synthesize it. They are 3M Post-it Notes' favorite customer. And then eventually design the pixel-perfect screen designs that our software teams turn into working software. These are some of the things we've done at Menlo, just simply to get us to one simple point. We want a chance to work with pride. We want a chance to deliver to the world something that delights the end users and works incredibly well. The spirit of Menlo is actually driven by a simple phrase, and this is what I want you to carry back with you to wherever you go home to work after the conference ends. And it's this simple phrase: run the experiment. This underpins almost everything we do at Menlo. The idea of running the experiment says, you know what, let's just try something and see if it works. Most of the things you see from us today were the results of experiments we had tried somewhere along the way and something worked. Now, I know what happens at a conference like this. You come in, you meet with each other, you hear from keynote speakers, you bring home some books, maybe you read them right away, you talk to others, you go to other presentations, you come back to work, and you're so excited. You're filled with new ideas, and then you meet somebody in your building who wasn't here, and you grab them, and you say, plastic Viking helmets is the key. And they look at you and go, that won't work here. HR will never approve that. And at that moment, you're deflated, all the ideas disappear like the morning fog, and you go back to work. I want to arm you with one simple response when somebody looks at you and whatever idea you bring back and they say, that won't work here. Shrug your shoulders and say, I know, but let's run the experiment. Let's not defeat the idea before we've even tried it. Now, let me tell you our most famous experiment, the one that gets us a lot of attention, and it is, in fact, about babies. Okay, now it's a fun story. You will remember this story long after you forget what my name is or the name of my company or anything like that or the name of the book, but you'll remember this story. But I want to make sure that you don't walk out of here going, oh, it's all about babies. No, it's not about babies. It's about run the experiment. Let me tell you how this experiment turned out. 10 years ago, one of our key team members, Tracy, went off on maternity leave after having little Maggie. She was gone for 3 months, and she was ready to come back to work. She came to me and she said, Rich, I'm ready to come back. And I said, awesome. When can you be here? And she said, well, we're trying to solve one big problem in our lives. The daycare we plan to put Maggie in is full, and grandparents live too far away to help. She said, my husband and I don't know what to do. Now, in this moment, having never been presented with a challenge like this, there was a screaming match in my brain that Tracy never heard. You know what these are like, the bright voice and the dark voice. The dark voice said, don't you dare say what you're about to say. HR will, the lawyers will freak out, the insurance policies will go through the roof. The bright voice said, you're an entrepreneur. It's your company. You can do whatever you want. You don't even have an HR department. So I looked at Tracy, I said, bring her in. Now, if I'd only had a camera in that moment, the look of bewilderment on her face was amazing. She said, what do you mean? I said, bring her into work. She said, all day? I said, yeah. She said, every day? I said, why not? And she said, where will I put her? In this big open room. I said, Tracy, she's 3 months old. She's not going anywhere. Just put her on the floor in a bassinet or a car seat or whatever, wherever you're working. She said, what if she makes a fuss? I said, here? It's like a noisy restaurant. You'll never hear it. And she says, come on, Rich, you raised 3 daughters. You know what kind of fuss they can make. It'll disrupt the whole place. And I looked at her and I said, Tracy, you're the mom. I trust you. You'll do the right thing. We'll work it out together. Let's run the experiment. Now, isn't she adorable? Funny thing is, that's not Maggie. This is Ellie, Menlo baby number 8. We have had 18 babies in Menlo in the last 10 years. This has been a delightful experiment. Now, I will tell you, key thing about run the experiment. Expect the unexpected, especially if it involves babies. Did Maggie fuss? Of course she fussed. It was the team's response that I didn't anticipate. As soon as the baby fussed, they were all like, no, 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 it's my turn to hold the baby. We started to get sign-up lists. I invoked executive privilege every now and then and put my name at the front of the list. And they were all like, oh, no, it's my turn to hold the baby. Ellie one day put a Post-it note on my monitor with a note. I think she had help. She was only 6 months old. And it said, Dear Mr. Rich, I'm really sorry I threw up on your shoes yesterday. Things happen. Ellie learned to pair program. Ellie went to design meetings. Henry came back to visit and, see how things are going. Get together with Fern the dog. And then we discovered something really amazing. Our customers behave better when you bring a baby to the meeting. They don't yell at you, they don't swear at you, it's amazing. Joy. This is Henry learning to manage. Hey, how's it going? What you working on? Are you almost done? Are you staying this weekend? And then this happened, and I will tell you that this was an important moment in our history as well. I thought it was just a fun moment, but then I realized something far more important was going on here. We've always had dogs at Menlo for our entire history. We actually, in our last lease with our landlord, we built in that we could have up to 3 dogs in our space, just to be a little careful there. But in this particular case, our customer called up to have a show and tell, and he said, hey, Rich, do you mind if I bring Buster to the meeting with me? And I said, sure, who's Buster? He says, my Great Dane. Now, Buster came in the office, and he walked in the front door, pretty friendly creature, actually, and he greeted me by putting his paws on my shoulders. And his head was here. Now, in your language, I'm 2 meters tall, and this dog was over my head. It was a little unnerving. And Buster would get in the conference room, and he wanted to smell Menlo, so he'd literally just stick his paws in the glass doors and push them open so he could stick his face out there and smell us. But what I realized in this moment was what was going on here was our customer, who couldn't bring his dog into where he worked. It actually wouldn't be appropriate, so it wasn't like something wrong with his employer that they couldn't have dogs. What he did for a living, you would not want dogs there. But he was choosing, when he was interacting with us, to be like us. And I think when you think about the culture you want to create inside your own organization, realize that if you create a strong enough culture, the people who interact with you will want to be more like you. And that's a neat place to be when you create a strong culture inside of your organization. So I just want to encourage you on this simple front: run the experiment. Now, there is no question in our industry that we are holding the lives of people in our hands with what we do. Our industry needs fundamentally to catch up to the responsibility it has to the world, because software is now too important. It runs everything. I wouldn't be here with you today were it not for all the software systems that got me here safe and sound. So there's no question inside of everything we do, we take this fundamental approach around rigor and discipline to make sure that we have the best possible chance to deliver something that is emergency-free. Interestingly enough, the last time our team remembers a true software emergency, 2004. It's just remarkable to me, because my days used to be filled with emergencies back in my chaos years, and now they almost never happen. We're not bug-free, but we are emergency-free. But ultimately, what did I want to do? I wanted to create that learning organization that Peter Senge described in the 5th discipline, because it is, in fact, our only competitive advantage is to outlearn our competition. So I want to thank you for bringing me in, to being part of your conference here, to bring me into Poland. I really appreciate the chance to describe joy as we see it at Menlo. Thank you very much.